Have you wondered about living elsewhere in your retirement? Well, we have almost daily. No, it's not a simple decision, especially when two people are involved.
Hi, this is
Gil
and Gene of Retire There, a podcast about retirement destinations. We live in Brooklyn, New York. Having grown up and worked in this area of the country, we're hoping to relocate when we're both retired. For us, it's the weather, the chaos, the noise, and the yearning to be near nature and not within 3 feet of human beings.
That's right. In February 2020, we embarked on our journey to find that special place. We spent a week in Winter Park, Florida, which is beautiful, but something said it wasn't for us. As we were planning for the next trip, the pandemic arrived. Gene then gave birth.
I gave birth?
To this podcast. With so many baby boomers retiring, many must be relocating. Why not connect with and learn from them?
Here's a little background about us.
I'm Asian, born in Brazil, and grew up in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I'm an engineer turned attorney turned podcaster. I recently retired from a university career practicing higher education law. I loved the academic environment, but it was time to do something else. I no longer have to set an alarm, drive in BQE traffic, or work with people who don't always share the same principles. Ooh, did I just say that? You bet I did. I traded all that in to binge crime dramas into the wee hours, just a little bit, to develop the podcast, to volunteer, practice metalsmithing, tackle our possessions. No regrets so far. Gene?
I'm not Asian, and as Gil mentioned, I'm not retired. I'm just plain tired.
Oh.
Born and raised in Long Island, New York, a place I always wanted to leave. I'm a law librarian working in a court who loves his job, but we're retired by the time we select our ideal location. We will be speaking to folks from across the street to across the globe who have moved to their dream venues and more. So please stay tuned, and remember, if you know anyone who has moved anywhere for retirement, let us know.
Thank you. Hola. Today we'll be chatting with Hugh Donagher and Brian Rountree. They are in Barcelona, Spain. They moved there most recently from San Antonio, Texas, although they've lived around the country. So Barcelona is a city and seaport and capital of Barcelona province and of Catalonia Autonomous Community. It is located in northeastern Spain, about 90 miles south of the French border. It's Spain's major Mediterranean port and commercial center, and it's famed for its individuality, cultural interest, and physical beauty. On his visit to the city in 1862, Hans Christian Andersen remarked that Barcelona was the Paris of Spain. That's an interesting statement, knowing that Barcelona was offered the Eiffel Tower before Paris.
Wow.
The city is indeed a major cultural center with a remarkable history. It abounds with archives, libraries, museums, and buildings of interest featuring superb examples of modernist and Art Nouveau decor and architecture. With a population of 1.6 million within city limits, its urban area extends to numerous neighboring municipalities within the province of Barcelona and is home to around 4.8 million people, making it the fifth most populous urban area in the European Union after Paris, the rural area, Madrid, and Milan. Here are a few interesting facts about Barcelona. The city has two official languages, Spanish and Catalan, which is not a dialect, but a completely distinct language from Spanish. So, for example, good morning in Catalan would be bon dia, and in Spanish, it's buenos dias. 2, the city is the only recipient of the Royal Gold Medal for Architecture, presented by the Royal Institute of British Architects. 3, it's home to over 20 Michelin-starred restaurants. It has 9 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, the largest football or soccer stadium in Europe, home to FC Barcelona, and it's believed that Barcelona is older than Rome.
How can that be?
Gene, you really don't know. All right, so stop interrupting me. Basically, Barcelona is an incredible and beautiful city, and I think of it like New York City, actually.
But better architecture.
Better architecture?
I would say so.
Oh, absolutely. The 100,000 years old buildings and so forth.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit about our guests. Gene?
Hugh Donagher is a Connecticut Yankee, not to be confused with the baseball team. He was born in Hartford, Connecticut, and raised in Windsor Loch, Connecticut. He studied at Albright College in Reading, Pennsylvania. 30 years ago, he traded the northeastern winters for the harsh climate of San Diego, California. Yeah, I live there. Really harsh. Since then, he has also lived in the California Bay Area, San Antonio, Texas, and Seattle, Washington. His varied career pursuits have centered around technology, communications, nonprofit advocacy, and community building. His interests include writing, photography, and travel. Brian Rountree is a reformed Southerner, born in Florida and raised in Georgia. He joined Hugh's California journey already in progress in the early 90s, and together, they proceeded to move around the country for his career in software engineering, which is taking him to Yahoo, Amazon, and HP, among other U.S. companies. In 2020, his career brought him to Barcelona for a business trip. Brian is passionate about food and beverage. He enjoys being creative in the kitchen and behind the bar, and he finds inspiration exploring the local food scene and fine dining establishments at home and while traveling. About 6 years ago, you applied for and received Irish citizenship through descent, and he also has an Irish passport. This is the basis for the couple's legal residency and employment status in the EU. Brian and you visited Spain for 3 weeks in 2013 to celebrate their 20th anniversary. After exploring Barcelona, San Sebastian, Zaragoza, Madrid, and Valencia, they returned home with a vague notion that maybe they'd like to retire in Spain someday. The idea simmered on the back burner for a number of years until several pieces fell into place and suddenly transformed the dream of retiring to Spain to a reality of moving there for work, landing them in Barcelona years before retirement. They and their pooch, Hobo, great name by the way, now live in the beautiful and vibrant barrio of Gracia in central Barcelona. Brian leads an engineering organization for one of Spain's largest and most successful tech startups, and Hugh now works at BCN Life, a boutique relocation agency specializing in helping folks relocate to Barcelona, and he also teaches English on the side.
So guys, welcome to Retire There. Many people love Barcelona. What made you give up everything in the United States of America to make Barcelona home?
I would argue that we didn't give up anything for the life that we have now in Barcelona. I will personally say that I've always loved the idea of America, but the implementation of America kind of is terrible, especially as a gay couple who have been together for almost 30 years. We always remember that, America was the first democracy, but other democracies have come afterwards. And so America is really the beta test of it. And subsequent countries have come along and improved it in terms of better access to healthcare, more normative politics, less division, less acrimony. Yeah, so I don't see us as necessarily giving up everything from America, as more like fleeing to a much better situation.
The motivations for each individual might be a little bit different. And for me, escaping the political reality of the U.S., the current political situation, was more of a side benefit. My interest was rooted in my studies in college, being a dual major in Spanish, learning about the Latin American and Spanish cultures and language that's shared around those two worlds really piqued my interest. And when we came here, I just sort of fell in love. Yeah. So, I mean, like you said, it was a long time dream of ours to retire here. Visiting here kind of really crystallized that. And when I got my Irish citizenship, I realized that we'd be able to live and work in Europe without any difficulty, which of course puts us in a different position than a lot of the people listening to this who are probably going to be exploring visas and whatnot, which I know a little bit about for my work, but we didn't need that, right? So that made it very easy. Mm-hmm. And then, Europe the European tech scene has a thirst for sort of Silicon Valley trained tech leadership, which is what Brian was able to bring to the table. So finding work for him was not difficult.
Actually, the funny part about it was we've spent almost 30 years moving around the United States, where every 5 years or so, I would have to look at Hugh and say, please give up what you're doing so we can move to a new city to advance my career. And at one point, Hugh got tired of doing that and said, look, I'm not going to move again unless you get a job in Spain. And so I was like, challenge accepted. And so always in the back of my head, I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to make another move for my career, I should make it a move that's going to be more permanent. And it should probably be one where actually he comes with me. So just before the pandemic started, I sort of broadened my job search and started including companies in Spain. Because his EU citizenship meant that I wouldn't have to go through a background check or the highly qualified visa process or any of the things that you would have to do if you were a non-resident to move to Spain for work.
Good thing they didn't have to look into your background.
Well, I hope you know that by now. Over 6 years?
20. It'll be 29 years in November.
No, it'll be 30 years. 29 years in November. Yeah, 30 years.
So is that why you got Irish citizenship? You had planned to move to Spain?
Actually, no. I got the Irish citizenship because it's, the Ireland instituted a program to try to repatriate some portion of the diaspora. I always had it in mind that I might do it just for sentimental reason, to be connected to my Irish heritage, my grandparents, who I was very close to. And then in 2016, one of Brian's coworkers, who's from Ireland, really lit a fire under my butt and said, you need to do this. And that I'm visiting my family next week. I'm going to pull your grandfather's birth certificate for you.
How nice.
That was so nice.
Yeah. So then I finished. I mean, it wouldn't have been difficult. He just did that to spur me on because he's a big advocate of Americans who qualified getting their granny passport, as he calls it. So yeah, that's what did it. And I remember the moment the paperwork arrived and I just kind of looked at it and this is very special. But then I also thought, what would my grandparents think? They're gone now, 20 years or more. And they both left a country that had no opportunities for them to move to the New World so their descendants could be Americans. My grandfather never wanted to go back. My grandmother went back a few times to visit her mother before her mother died, but they didn't look back. And I thought, what would they think of one of their descendants doing this? That today is a very different world. It's a global world. In the U.S., I mean, in our opinion, is no longer the gold standard it once was. I mean, it may be to a lot of people, but it isn't necessarily. Yeah, I had options. And this was about 5 months before the 2016 election, which we won't go into. And I thought, well, at least I have an exit strategy.
Yeah.
And it turns out, I'm not a big believer in fate or religion or anything like that, but the mere fact that he was able to get Irish citizenship and an EU passport 4 years later meant we could circumvent all of the traditional burdens and barricades that a EU government would put up to have someone immigrate to that country for work.
Right? Yeah.
Because I am the spouse of an EU passport holder, I am legally entitled to be in Spain with him and seek employment. Traditionally, if we were to hire someone from, say, India or the United States, which we do, we hire global talent now. There's usually about a 6 to 8 month period where we've hired that person, but they're waiting for all of the various visa processes to go through. I was able to accept the job that I took, and 3 weeks later, I was able to be in Spain at the office starting work.
Wow.
So I was able to kind of go sidestep all of those administrative kind of loophole or hassles that you have to go through.
I will say that when we considered moving to, when we were thinking about moving to Spain, or when I was thinking about retiring to Spain, Barcelona was not my target. I saw myself in a smaller city, someplace like Logroño, which is the capital of the La Rioja wine region, or one of the little villages along the Costa Dorada, which is the stretch between Barcelona and Valencia. But why Barcelona? That's where the job is. We came to Barcelona, which is, I wasn't opposed to Barcelona. It just wasn't, a big city like Barcelona wasn't necessarily my target. But now that we're here, I am thoroughly captivated under the spell that the city casts over you when you just kind of put yourself in her hands. So it's really a great place to see.
Yeah, and that was going to be my question. There's so many amazing places in Spain. Why Barcelona? So you just answered it. But is your company situated in Barcelona?
Barcelona founded company.
Okay.
Our headquarters are here in Barcelona. I would say we have about 2,000 employees in the Barcelona area.
Okay.
We do have a major presence in Madrid as well. And we have a major presence in Warsaw, Poland, as well as Kyiv in the Ukraine. And then we have some smaller offices in some of the areas where we operate. But our major centers are Barcelona, Madrid, Warsaw and Kyiv.
Okay. Because I was just going to ask, what about a little suburb of Barcelona, Hugh? I mean, would that have been too much of a commute or?
Well, we don't own a car here. The public transit here is amazing. We love owning a car. You mentioned in your intro comparing Barcelona to New York City. And that caught my ear because I like to do that. The way I put it is people from New York City would laugh at this idea. But Barcelona has the elements of New York City life that I want, right? Good public transit, art, culture, good restaurant. Not on the scale of New York, but big enough for us without all of the downsides of New York City life, which New Yorkers tolerate in order to be in New York, right? But as far as the suburb, I think that we're still in a phase of our lives where city living is what we want, right? I do envision perhaps a small village, especially since the villages here are pretty self-sufficient, have the shops you need. You don't have to go to the mall. You don't have to get in a car and go to Target. But if you live far enough out, you might want to have a car, which we don't really anticipate ever wanting. We would want to be on the train, but the trains from Barcelona throughout the province of Barcelona and the region of Catalonia are very extensive. So we could live in Sitges, which is a beach town about 30 miles south of us, very big with the gay community too. We could live in Tarragona, which is even a little further south. We could live up on the Costa Brava, which is the region between Barcelona and the coast of France. Those are potentials for when we are not, commuting to work every day.
But since I'm still working, the things that we would like to optimize for are things like commute time.
Yeah.
And if we were to choose to live in a suburb outside of Barcelona and still choose to not have a car, my day is almost completely regulated by the train schedule.
Sure.
So when I get up in the morning, when I can commute into work, how long I have to stay at the office, and when I can come back is determinative by the train schedule.
Okay.
Whereas where we live now, I can either walk out our front door and hail a cab and be 10 minutes into the office. I can walk 3 blocks and get on a bus that drops me off 2 blocks from the office. I can get on my electric bike and be there in 10 minutes. I can take the metro and have a 5-minute walk when I'm done. And all of those options are available to me throughout the course of the day.
Okay.
So I can choose to work from home in the morning and go into the office. I can choose to get up early and go to the office and then come home early. Whereas if we were to live in a suburb outside of the city, it would be far more like living in a bedroom community outside of New York City, where your life is sort of dictated by what the train schedule is.
Sure.
And by the way, this has been a guiding principle of ours as we've moved around the country. We have always seen, okay, Brian's job is here. Even when we owned a car, it was like, we're not going to commute for an hour. So we always put a pin in the office and do a circle of 20-minute ride So we've always followed that principle of live, work, and play in the same place. We have the privilege to be able to do that. Not everybody can. But I mean, it changes your life if you're not an hour and a half to work every day. Again, some people don't have the choice. But we did, and it also allowed us to be a one-car family for the vast majority of our relationship, right? Which is another sort of contribution to the economy, the environment.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's always been important to us. So that is why being in Barcelona right now is being centrally located is in keeping with that principle. So,
but Brian, you're in the tech field. Can you work 5 days a week at home if you want?
During the pandemic, yes. I will say that the leadership of the company that I work for does believe highly in the collaborative nature of people being in a shared space. So now that we're coming out of the pandemic, we are adopting a hybrid model where the expectation is that you will spend 2 days a week at the office and 3 days a week working from home.
Oh, that's nice.
I am part of what's considered the senior leadership team. And so the expectations for me longer term are that I will be spending more time in the office than that. I offer my team the flexibility of essentially coming into work when it's important to them, when you need to collaborate with your fellow coworkers. But if you need focus time and you need time to concentrate on a problem, certainly being in a large open air office with everyone around and talking is not conducive to that. So I think in this new world, I think we're all going to be some companies will be fully remote all the time. I think the vast majority of companies will settle on some sort of hybrid where when you need to work and collaborate with people, you come into the office. When you need to focus, you can work from home. I take advantage of the time when I'm in the office to actually meet with people in person. And then when I need focus time, I tend to work from home.
I have one more work question, even though this show is not about that, but I must know. And my question is, I'm familiar with the tech industry. I have a family member or two actually in that field, in that space. Is the culture different in Europe, or is it the same as, like they complain about, I'll just use a name like Google. There's so many complaints and, forming of unions at Amazon and so forth. Would you say it's more relaxed or more understanding or go, go, go?
So there is an interesting mix in the tech scene in Europe that is highly regional. So if you were in London, for example, the tech scene in London is far more closely aligned with Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
I think that has to do primarily with the cost of living in London, the overall sense that London is a world financial capital. So people who work in the tech scene in London, you will find work a lot of hours. The grind is certainly there. I think that Spain, let's face it, Spain historically has a reputation for being far more laissez-faire about work.
Siesta?
Yes, the daily siesta, etc. I think that the tech scene in Spain is a little bit of a hybrid. We choose to work very hard when we are working. We do have a much more of a strong respect for work-life balance here in Spain.
Nice.
In the United States, I would routinely get emails from my boss on the weekends.
Yeah.
I would routinely get texts from my boss or my team on the weekends. Here, it is very much not that. That is highly discouraged. Mm-hmm. If you're at work, you're at work. And if you're at home, you're at home.
Okay. Is vacation or holiday 6 weeks?
Right now, it is August in Spain. I would say of the 110 people that work for me, about 48 of them are out for the entire month of August.
Wow. Nice. Okay.
And the others will sort of piggyback on either September or July to take their time off with their families. But we don't have an official vacation policy at work. We say, take the time that you need.
I've heard this before with tech companies.
Yeah.
Take all you need. Yeah.
Take the time that you need as long as your work is done and you clear it with your manager. Take the time you need. And so I would say about almost 50% of my team is out for the entire month of August.
Nice.
Okay.
And we also have, by the way, and this varies by region in Spain, but we have something like, I want to say at least 15 bank holidays where the whole region closes down. Pretty much all of the major Catholic saints' days.
Sure.
Tomorrow's a holiday for the Feast of the Assumption. December, we have, in the first week in December, we have December 6th is Constitution Day, which is a national holiday. Then December 8th is the Feast of the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, which is a holiday. So work, day off, work. And when they take those days off, they're serious about it. Everything closes down. Yeah, so.
Well, good for you guys, man. I'm so jealous.
And just one more thing. Do we actually have siesta at your job, Brian?
Not at my job,
okay.
But it is fascinating though, because we live on the high street of the neighborhood that we chose to live in. So like the ground floor of our building and the ground floor of all the buildings around us are either coffee shops, restaurants, retail establishments, everything. And nice. I would say on any given day, if you go out at 2:00 in the afternoon, half those businesses are shut.
That's also partially because we are not in the tourist area, right? We are in, and on top of that, the neighborhood we're in is a formerly independent village that was annexed by Barcelona. So the Villa de Gracia, the village of Gracia, which was outside of Barcelona. And so it is a very fiercely independent. It's surrounded by the addition to Barcelona, which is very planned, very grid-like. And then when it surrounds Gracia, the grid disappears because we have the same kind of meandering streets that you have in the old city, but not medievally narrow, but it is older. That means that the population in this neighborhood is very Catalan. I mean, liberty and freedom is a big theme here in this neighborhood. So that's why the siesta is still very traditional here. And you have a lot of restaurants that won't even open till 1 because everybody's working till 1. Then people are going on siesta. So, we're going to open up. We'll be open from 1 to 4. Then we close again and we open for dinner at 6 or 8. So that's a real thing. It's less, I think, than it used to be, but it's definitely still here.
Okay. All right. Crunch time, Gene. So the US dollar today, we're in mid-August, is 0.97 euro. So for the purposes of this conversation, we can pretty much make it equal.
Almost 1-to-1, yeah.
Almost 1-to-1. Okay, so let's move to housing. Are you renting? Did you buy? How big is the space or how little? Talk to us about that.
So we started out, we're renting, first of all, and we're renting furnished because we do not consider ourselves expats. We consider ourselves immigrants. There's a fine line. We sold everything, as you said. We sold everything. We brought so little things, one piece of furniture, art, books. So we're renting, and we're renting furnished, which is very common here to be able to rent furnished. Started out in a small loft in Gracia. We landed in Gracia, which we kind of have a talent. We have a knack for landing where we want to be. We have a good talent for that. A little bit of luck and a little bit of research, but we fell in love with the neighborhood in the first flat we were in, which was about 900 square feet. It was about 1,200 euros a month. But again, this is pandemic pricing when rent was better prices starting to ramp back up. We were there for the thing to know about renting in Spain, by the way, and we could spend a lot more on this topic than we have here. So I'm just going to say that people who are listening to this should do their own research because there was some major reformation to the rental laws in 2019 and 2020 that very much favor the tenant, because the financial crisis of 2008 and then Airbnb kind of destroyed the rental market for a long time, and they wanted to recover that. So, our first lease was for 11 months, which allowed for the landlord more leeway to raise the rent the way he wants to. Oh. But when you rent for your home, and it's what they call vivienda, it's your homestead, the minimum rental term is 5 years. And that's if you're renting from an individual who owns the property. Okay. It's 7 years if you're renting from a corporation. And then in that term, they can only raise the rent by an index sent by the government that starts at 2%. And I think this year that 2.2%, and they can't raise it any more than that. So the idea is that they're protecting people from losing their homes. Our constitution in Spain protects the person over the speculator. You're a person, you're a family, you have a home, you have a right to expect that home to be stable. So that's the basis for that. And that's all I'm going to say about that. But we are in a 7-year lease now.
What was the cost again?
The cost of the first one.
The cost of the first one was 1,200 euro.
But as soon as we left, it went back on the market for 14 because this pandemic was starting to wind down. So, that was the thing you can do with the 11-month leases. When the 11 month is up, you can raise it as much as the market will bear. Mm-hmm. But on a 5-year lease, you can't do that, or 7-year lease.
So our current apartment is actually it's the largest space we've actually lived in together our 29 years together.
Really?
Wow. We were shocked to find this kind of a space.
It is a 1,600 square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bath.
Wow.
In a historic building. We have the entire 5th floor of the building. There's only one apartment per floor. We are currently paying 2,500 euro a month.
Okay.
Again, we started that term during the pandemic, and it's going to be limited to how much they can raise it. If this were going on the market today, it would probably be closer to 3 to start. Okay. So, but this is when I said I feel like some elements of New York City. We're in a 1930s apartment building, that really feels almost like one of the brownstones in New York kind of thing, or one of the apartment buildings, a doorman building in New York, although we don't have a doorman.
We have 12-foot ceilings with crown moldings and chandeliers and hardwood floors and all the original windows in the terrace. I mean, we were very lucky to find the place that we lived, and we are looking to buy a place. And when we do buy a place, we are going to downsize, but as part of that initial magic of Barcelona, the idea of having an old, grand, historic apartment overlooking the high street of a grand Barcelona neighborhood,
you got to do
had a certain amount of appeal to us.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I agree.
Now that we are getting settled in Barcelona and understand what we actually need versus what we want, we will likely buy a smaller place that is more suitable for what we actually need on a day-to-day basis. But when we saw this place and we saw the doorway and the moldings and the fact that it's a pre-war building and we have the entire floor, your emotions sort of take hold at that point. And you're like, oh, I want this apartment.
Yeah. Now, does that include utilities or anything?
No.
Okay.
But there's not. I mean, the utilities here, I would say, up until the conflict started in the Ukraine, the utilities here are very inexpensive.
Okay. So can you give us some figures? Yeah.
Yeah, we would pay about 40 euro a month for.
I think more like 60 for gas and electric.
So it's like 40 for gas and 20 for electric.
And we pay about 45 every 2 months for water and sewer.
Oh, every other month. Okay.
Every other month. Okay. Yeah.
There's no garbage or anything because you actually there is no on-premise garbage. There's
bins in the street.
Bins in the street everywhere for your recycling and stuff, and everyone just takes it out there. So there's no technical garbage day, which is nice. You just take it out when
What about internet?
Internet is so much cheaper here and so much better.
This was one of our big shocks. So we got when we got here, okay, we can get our Spanish phone numbers and all that. So we went to Orange. Everybody has an opinion about every provider, just like in the U.S. We went to Orange, which is a French company, major provider here. We got 2 phone numbers with unlimited everything, gigabit internet to a 1930s building, by the way.
Wow.
And it is 800 or more megabits per second reliably.
Wow.
We got the full TV package with all the football channels, which they were very. Everybody we talked to want to make sure we understood. They wanted us to understand. You have all the football channels.
They're like, you Americans.
And wait, there's more. Netflix HD and Amazon Prime, all for 120 euros a month.
Oh,
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Wow.
We didn't even watch football, and the guy who came to install it made sure he ran through all the channels to show us exactly how much football we had.
Yeah, he figures you're crazy Americans, you know? Yeah.
We don't use the television package at all, except for the Netflix and the Amazon Prime. We don't use the regular, but it came bundled, so
yeah,
right.
You know,
wait, it included Netflix also. You said
Netflix HD
and Amazon Prime.
Wow.
And we already had it, so all we had to do was go into Netflix, and there was a code to use to redeem it, and it changed the billing method. And we did. We bumped it up to the 4 screens because we wanted the 4 screens, and we still pay a little bit, but we don't pay the full.
But that same level of internet and cell phone in the United States was.
I don't know. We paid more than more than that just for our mobile service.
Oh yeah, forget it. Yeah. Now, do you have an elevator in your building?
Yes, we do. We would not live in one without one.
I heard 5th floor, and I'm thinking, forget it.
Yeah, no, we wouldn't live in one without one. Although there are a lot that don't, but you see that in the rent. If something is a really good price in rent, you need to be sure, or price to buy. You're like, okay, it's a building that doesn't have an elevator. Yep, it doesn't have an elevator.
Or air conditioning, right? Yeah. You will see lower rents on very nice units, and you'll find out, it's a walk up and it doesn't have air conditioning.
Yeah, right. So those things do exist. I mean, the Barcelona, like in any area, you have to know what you're looking for. So
So you have central air.
We do, but it really only.
It's European air conditioning. So let's be very clear. It is a non-powerful unit that has a minimum temperature it will go to, not as strong as a United States.
Well, I mean, it's mounted on the roof 2 floors above us, right? That's where the compressor is, and the vent is only we only have 1 vent, and it's in the main living area, so it doesn't cool the bedroom very effectively. And I mean, we didn't think it was going to be much of an issue, except we're on the 5th floor, which means we have full sun exposure all day long on our 3 French doors on the front window. So it's an oven, right? It isn't so much that it's so hot outside, although it's been warm. It's more of the fact that even though we can open 3 French doors on the front and a wall of windows in the back and get a beautiful cross breeze going, that doesn't offset the fact that the sun is beating down on our apartment all day long. So it's been a bit of a trial this summer. We're basically sleeping in the living room right now. We're able to close off the back of the apartment. But yeah, we do have it. We do have it, and it's not uncommon for since the advent of the split technology.
Yeah,
a lot of all these old buildings, they'll have a split or 2 wherever they can put them in there. This one does not have splits, but those are also common.
Okay.
On the low end in your neighborhood, what do you think you can get a 1-bedroom apartment for? Say it's a walk up
to buy.
You can get
rent
800.
Oh. Wow.
That's nice.
There are 2 units above us that are called atticos. So they were the original attic of the building that got converted into 2 very small units. They're not large. I believe that our upstairs neighbor is paying something like 650 euros a month.
The ones above us are about a quarter of the size of ours because they don't use the front half of the building. They're set on the back half of the building, then they're cut in half again. So, but they also have terraces instead of balconies. So they have large terraces from the front of their front door to the front of the building, which we can't use. They're private terraces.
You have the whole floor, don't you have a terrace or? We
have what's called a terrace. We have the 3 French window doors, floor to ceiling doors we have in our front room have small little alcoves that there's like an alcove you can step out onto. Yeah, it's probably you could maybe put a small table and chairs out there.
A half table.
But it's mostly to stand there and look at the view.
It's not. It's a little bit more than a Juliet balcony, but you wouldn't call it a full balcony either. So.
Got it. Okay.
What do you think on the low end? What would it cost to buy a place?
So this unit that we're in right now, in the current market, if we were to buy it, would probably be about €500,000
or more.
Huh?
Or more.
Wow,
that's not bad though. In a major city.
No, it's I mean, I would say that the overall property market, the overall cost of living for Barcelona is remarkably inexpensive for the world-class city that it is.
It's actually not all that different from San Antonio, Texas, which is not an expensive city.
Right.
The per square foot price we're paying for this unit is about the same as we were paid in downtown San Antonio for a unit. To buy though, I think what is it about
About 4,000 per square meter.
Per square meter, which is square meter is 10 square feet. So what's it about 400 per
Yeah,
square
so
foot?
about 400 per square foot.
I don't know. I can't do my math, but yeah.
That's
About 4,000. We're looking at places that range from 350 to 500. And at 350, 380, in fact, the one we like the best right now is only about 380. And it's a ground floor unit. It does have an outdoor 18 square meter terrace in the back,
Nice.
private.
Wow.
28-foot ceilings in the front room.
Yeah.
What?
It used to be a commercial space on the ground floor of the building that got converted into sort of a semi-loft space.
Nice.
So one trick to buying that take Americans by surprise is you have to add 10% to the cost of everything because there is a transfer tax of 10% that's due. If you get a mortgage, it's going to be due immediately, but if you buy it, you have to pay it within 30 days, and it's a 10% transfer tax. But in exchange for that, property taxes extremely low. For that unit, probably about $300 a year.
Wow.
Very nice. Very nice.
And what about annual fees?
On that, a building like that would have what are called the gastos, or the monthly expenses for what they call the monthly community, and they'd be about $50 a month because it's really just for clean. And of course, I don't know. I'm sure you know it's there, but I don't know what the exposure is in terms of assessments for the building needs a new roof or the building needs a new this. I'm sure that's there, but I mean, I don't know exactly. I'm sure that's probably assessed on a per square meter basis and all that kind of stuff. But the traditional maintenance would be for covering the licensing of the elevator of the building and paying a very nice elderly woman to come in once a week and clean the stairwells and mop the front sidewalks and things like that.
That includes cleaning. Oh my God.
Not of our apartment, but of all the common space.
Not the apartment.
Gotcha. Well, that's good.
And you say that for that apartment, it's $50 a month.
$50 a month, €50 a month. Yeah.
You can also have cleaning.
We do.
Okay.
We have someone come once a week that spends 3 hours cleaning our entire apartment, and we pay her €13 an hour. €13 an hour.
Wow.
Oh my God.
That's
I've got
great.
someone coming for 50.
About what we pay her for weekly cleaning, what we paid for twice a month cleaning in San Antonio.
Can we move to food? When you step outside your building, I'm sure there's restaurants galore.
It's even better.
Yeah.
When you step out of the front door of our apartment and you look across the street, there are 2 grocery stores next to each other.
Oh, wow.
There are 27 fruit and vegetable stands within 5 blocks of our apartment.
27.
You counted.
There are
2 bakeries.
2 bakeries within a block, 5 butchers, 4 fishmongers.
Okay.
And that is before you get to our central neighborhood public market, which has been there since the 1800s, which is an old big building where inside are family-run stalls that specialize in cheese and meat. And that is like 4 blocks from our apartment.
That market is owned by the city, and they own 40 of them in Barcelona. So every neighborhood has its own little market like that, which, we know, even as Americans, that you hear that about the European shopping lifestyle. Our freezer is practically empty. And our refrigerator only has what we need for the next couple of days because you don't have to go shopping every week. You go, as Brian mentioned, there are 2 across the street, and then down another block, there's a more of a kind of a premium organic focused market. And as much as I love going to the Mercado, for all of those stalls, I get everything I need between those 3 stores, and I go every 2 or 3 days, just run across the street, get a few things. And in between them, there's a place that specializes in selling nothing but Iberico ham. Yeah. So if you need your ham, you just go to the ham store. And then another interesting, I don't know, you would think to ask, although maybe it's under healthcare, is that we also have about 4 pharmacies within walking distance. I know that every Barcelonan lives within 100 meters of a recycling station and trash station. Everywhere you're within 100 meters. I feel like there's some kind of a regulation about the pharmacies too, because no matter where you go, you'll see the green crop. You'll see 2 or 3 of them will be in sight. They're all over the place. And every one of them is staffed by a doctor. So they can sell you more than the pharmacy in the U.S. can. They can sell you some baseline, what would be prescription drugs in the U.S.
Yeah.
Counter here. Things like, I use a ketoconazole cream for my face, and that's a prescription in the U.S. and it's not here. And so they can kind of talk to you about what you need and literally do some minor diagnosis and send you home with some medications for certain things.
Oh,
very cool system that arranges for one of those pharmacies to be open 24 hours a day on a rotating basis, or open on the national holiday. You always have access to a pharmacy.
That's so fair. Yeah.
Wow.
So what are the prices of groceries? Like I know maybe with the pandemic things have changed, but compared to, let's say, the US, do you spend a lot less?
We're a little bit unique in this regard, in that one of the things that happened when I moved here. So I've lived here for almost 2 years now, and I've lost 40 pounds.
Nice.
Wow.
Hold on. I've lived here a year and a half and I've gained 60. Okay, go ahead.
So, however, one of the things that we found when we were living in the United States, specifically when we were living in San Antonio, which was so very, very warm, is you find yourself going to the grocery store less frequently by car and stocking up.
Mm-hmm.
And stocking up for us meant things like bags of chips, boxes of cereal, loaves of bread with preservatives, lots of things like that. When you move here and you're shopping just for what you need for the next day or two, our diet has shifted far more away from boxes and cans
and processed food, yeah,
and more towards vegetables and meats and things like that. So we don't really have, I would say that for traditional American brands, like if you want, you can buy a box of Frosted Flakes here in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
They're not cheap. If you move here as an American and you have your particular brand affinities for like your shampoo and your cereal and your box of oatmeal or peanut butter or something like that,
you're going to pay.
You're going to pay.
Yeah, yeah.
If you adapt to what's available, the local brands, and you explore those, and you're like, the soap that we get for the shower right now, I absolutely love it. I love the scent. I love the fragrance. I bring it home to America with me. My mother loves too. So we wanted to adopt the European lifestyle. So we explore what they have. That's all. So in terms of prices, it's hard to make a direct comparison because we don't shop on a weekly basis. So I can't tell you what a weekly grocery list equate to. But if I run to the market for makings for my Greek salad, I might spend maybe under 100 a week, maybe 100 a week to buy the things we eat each week. And that might include some local sausage. It might include some pre-made burgers that we cook. It'll include some the things I use to make salads and whatnot. I order
lots of cheese and lots of cured meat because we live in Spain and they love their cured meat. Oh my God.
And then let me tell you, we have had a few gatherings and I love to do charcuterie boards. I always have. I spend €100 on a charcuterie table for my party. I do a table. All the stuff that we pay.
Wow.
All the imported items in the U.S. are domestic here.
Yeah.
So you get 100 grams of the best quality jamón ibérico for €20.
Wow.
Like containers of salami for €1, containers of chorizo for €1.
Wow.
Brie for like €2.50. So for some of the things that you would consider like luxury items in the United States are considered staples here. Bottles of wine, for example, there's no tax in Europe on a bottle of wine. And so that $20 bottle of wine in the United States is a $5 bottle of wine here.
Seriously, literally.
Amazing. Yeah, we were just in the movies the other day and they had charcuterie on the menu. One of those theaters and I'm like, I'm not going to have this now. It's costing me way too much more than the expensive ticket to the film. Yeah,
and
go on.
Charcuterie is French for I shouldn't have eaten this before dinner. I will say that I think my impression is that meat is probably a little more expensive, but it's much higher quality. Like you buy chicken here, and the flesh is almost an orange color. It's a golden color, not white. The white meat is more golden in color and more flavorful.
They don't actually feed the thing about proteins here in Europe is the vast majority of the proteins you consume in the United States are fed industrial corn as their primary diet. All of the proteins here, corn is not considered their primary diet. Their primary diets are either grass or hay, and corn is used as a supplement only when grass or hay is unavailable.
Well, there are certain specialties, but yeah.
So generally speaking, meat is more expensive, but it is a far higher quality.
And it's also if you adopt a local lifestyle, truly start living like a Spaniard, meat is also much less common.
Yes.
You have it a couple times a week. You don't have meat every single day. The fish. Now, what's fun about you go to the markets we were talking about with all the stall. You go there on a Monday, and you say, why are all the fish stalls closed on Monday? Because they are. The answer will be because nobody fishes on Sunday.
Right. So the fish you're buying at the market was literally caught
the day before.
Right.
And it's much, much more reasonable.
I actually had an incredibly embarrassing experience at the fish market here in Spain. So I moved to Spain 6 months before Hugh moved to Spain. Hugh is the one who majored in Spanish at college and can speak Spanish, and who I rely on a daily basis to interpret what's going on in the outside world. I was at the fish market, and they were literally pulling salmon from their fishmonger and putting them on ice in front of everybody.
And starting to clean them. They clean them right there, too.
And it was a busy Saturday, so there were probably 20 people around, and the lady calls on me, and I'm like, ooh, I would like to get a portion of fish. And I tried to do that transaction in Spanish and failed so miserably because she literally pulled a piece of newspaper and she picked up an entire salmon and started wrapping it in newspaper. I was so embarrassed that I wound up holding up my phone and buying it and then leaving the store. And so I literally walked home through the neighborhood with a 15-pound salmon over my shoulder and brought it home and ate poke for like the next 2 weeks.
Frozen, yeah.
And how much was that? How much was that?
It was probably €40 for an entire.
Wow, that's so great.
Yeah, we were surprised. The people in Europe will say that Barcelona is an expensive city because compared to other small cities, it is. But Americans, and we're not the only ones. We have a lot of American people, our friends we've met here that live here, and we would not consider this to be an expensive city. Yeah, I mean, even for retiring here, it's not terribly expensive. So. The main thing about retirement, and we can't speak to this with any great expertise, is making sure you have your taxes worked out, because they do have a wealth tax here. So if you have, I don't know how all that works, but that's something that you'd want to talk to a Spanish tax attorney. But I mean, in terms of the cost of living, for your focus, for folks who are thinking about retiring here, it's very affordable. I'm sorry, the one last thing about food, maybe you're going to go into this separately, but Spain, of course, the main meal of the day is lunch. So aside from groceries, if you wanted to go eat lunch out every day, all of these little restaurants on weekdays, Monday through Friday, have their menu del dia, the menu of the day.
Yes.
It's a little 3 course. You pick a first course, you pick a second course. Dessert comes with it. Sometimes a glass of wine comes with it, and it's 10 to 15 euros.
Yeah,
that's great.
And I mean, and they're not feeding you crap. They're feeding you really good food. So,
yeah. No, that's amazing.
What about restaurants? I know they have a large variety of high-end restaurants, but can you eat inexpensively besides for lunch? Can you eat inexpensively?
Yes. There's certainly the tapas tradition is alive and well, where you go out and snack on specialties at little restaurants. Barcelona is a very food-driven city. There are restaurants up and down the spectrum, from Michelin-starred places all the way down to little holes in the wall that, are serving, a 90-year-old grandmother in the back who's making, a menu of 5 items, but they're really, really good. You can find food here at any budget. That's all very high quality. It's
a very international city, so you can find, really great Szechuan food, really great Japanese food, really great. And not so much great Indian food yet, we haven't found, but Malaysian food, so you can find all of that as well. You can eat anywhere from that $10 menu del dia for lunch to, we've been to a few of the Michelin restaurants just because that's one of our passions. And just yesterday, we went to one of the 2-star Michelin restaurants in town. We had their tasting menu for lunch. We didn't do a wine pairing, and it was $160 per person for the tasting menu at a 2-star Michelin restaurant, which is a really price for that level. It was a 10 courses. And even if you want to splurge on a nice 2-star lunch menu for a special occasion, it's not going to break the bank.
My big thing is I want to avoid cooking as much as possible. So I will go to the little grandmother, you know what I mean?
That's certainly one of the side benefits of working for the company I work for, because they're in the delivery business and I get deliveries for free. So I can literally use my own company's app and have Thai food delivered. The other day I had chicken and waffles delivered, or Syrian food, or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Is there street food, or is that not a thing in Spain?
So I would say that, like in most European cities, there is certainly a late night food culture, traditionally centered around things like shawarma and kebabs and gyros and things like that. But they are not done on stalls. They're done at little holes in the wall that actually have a storefront where maybe There's 10 square feet of space for the customers inside, but it's all kitchen. And so people are going in, ordering it, and then walking out onto the streets to consume it. But there's not much of like a food truck or cart kind of culture here in Barcelona, but there's lots of like little closet-sized shawarma places and kebab places and stuff like that.
And depending on the part of town and whether there's a lot of nightlife there, some of those places won't even open till 11 p.m. and they'll be open until 3 or 4 in the morning. So that's a very kind of a New York feel to me as well. You can get food late night if you want to.
Let's move on to healthcare. Okay. Can you talk to us about that? And
we can.
Oh, yes, we can.
All right. All right. Tell.
The first thing I'll tell you is that I am 57 years old. And when we moved here, because I did not have a job yet, even though I had the right to live and work in Europe, without coming to the country without an income, I had to prove means, and I had to buy my own private healthcare insurance. This is the key piece of it. My healthcare insurance as a 58-year-old man with no limits, no deductibles, no copays, no waiting period is 80 euros a month.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With no copays.
It's going to go up by age as well. And, and you do have to, there are other factors, but it's very reasonable. But after Brian started working here, we then qualified for the national healthcare system because he pays into it. Okay. And that costs us nothing. And Brian's going to tell you a really great story about his first interaction with the national healthcare system here.
Thank you.
So I am 48, have apparently learned that in my family history, there is a history of arthritis. Sorry. And so I would say about 8 months ago, I woke up and I looked down and I was like, my knee should not be that big. So there is your local doctor here in Spain, you get assigned a local doctor at your neighborhood health clinic, which is called the CAP. I don't know what that stands for.
Is something Catalan.
The Catalonian something of physicians or something like that. Yeah. But it's the public health office. Every neighborhood has one.
Okay.
And when you register with the government with your address, they then assign you to your local health clinic, which is your primary care physician. So I hobbled down to my primary care physician
having never seen them before.
Yeah, never seen them before. I waited about 10 minutes and I was in the office and she's a doctor and she's poking at my knee and she's asking me questions. And she's like, okay, well, this is not something I can take care of here. You need to go to the hospital. And so she arranged they knew I was coming. She transferred my records over to the hospital. And so I went to the hospital and I showed them my card. I would say within 25 minutes, I was in a bed. I had an IV for fluids. They were doing a blood draw for tests. They sent me off to do an X-ray. I was seen by the admitting doctor, who then, it turns out I was admitted to a teaching hospital. So they had a couple of med students come and take a look at me as well. And then they called in a specialist.
They withdrew fluid.
And they withdrew. And so then after the x-rays came back, the specialist essentially drained my knee. And then they sent me off to post-care, which involved more nurses, more IV fluids, test results, all of that kind of stuff. I was there for probably 10 hours and I was sent home with a set of prescriptions, 2 prescription drugs and 1 over-the-counter pain pill. So over the course of about 24 hours, I was seen by 3 doctors, 2 teaching doctors, a specialist, had x-rays done, blood draws done, IV fluids, nurses checking on me, and was sent home with 2 prescriptions. And the entirety of all of this cost me $6.
Oh my God. I love how he was building up the momentum.
And the $6 was for the over-the-counter pain pills. Oh. Everything else was covered.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
First of all, I was shocked by how quick the whole thing was.
The steroids were covered, the anti-inflammatory was covered, and the fact that the steroid could cause antacid meant that they prescribed a prescription strength antacid. All those were free. Oh. I actually paid the €6 for effectively a bottle of ibuprofen.
And, you hear so many stories about single payer systems or socialized medicine that, it's great in theory, but you have trouble getting all this care. Spain is actually the 7th highest healthcare system rated by the World Health Organization. So, which takes those things into effect. So that ranking is something to consider as well. Yeah, because my relatives in Ireland, which is number 17, will tell you they don't have an experience quite that good, but they still have a better system. US is number 30. Right?
US is number what? You 30, cut off.
37 in the World Health Organization rankings of national health.
I'm shocked it's so high.
Well, exactly. And so we were thinking back to the times in the United States where the few occasions where we needed to have like an emergency surgery.
Mhm.
You know, Hugh had his gallbladder removed at one point, and he would always be on my health care because I was working in the tech industry and very good benefits.
Yeah.
Even with very good benefits,
Thousands of dollars.
you would see thousands of dollars in
Yeah.
charges if you needed an emergency procedure. You know, I was sitting there all day fretting about what this was going to be. And they were like, oh, yeah, $6. I was like,
If I may, a little aside to that, if I may, I had to take our dog to the emergency hospital, which is not covered on any insurances.
Mhm.
And we brought him in. This was on Christmas Day. 24-hour hospital was open on Christmas Day. Brought him in, but they said, okay, we're going to have to take him back and give him an X-ray and, you know, the blood tests and all this stuff. And I'm sitting there in the waiting room. Brian's giving me the heavy-duty credit card. The cash register sounds are going off in my head as all this is happening.
Yeah, for animals. Yeah.
And they come back out. It came to $230 for the day.
Oh my goodness.
Wow.
I mean,
So
and that
this was a veterinarian close by?
yeah,
Yes.
Or
we walked
hospital?
15-minute walk, but yeah.
but
Wow.
on Christmas Day, and
I
it
know.
Yeah.
X-rays, fluids, diagnosis,
Unbelievable.
medicine,
Yeah.
treatment,
Yeah.
and it was €200.
Now, when you were in the hospital, did they speak English or did you understand? Was there everyone?
Not everybody. Some of the nurses
Right,
spoke
right.
Catalan.
But the specialists and
My primary care physician speaks English. All
Okay.
of the doctors who gave me the procedure. And if they didn't speak English, there was someone there acting as a translator.
okay. Let me just go back a moment. So if you move there, you can automatically take advantage of a clinic or do you ever? No. Okay. So can you tell us?
The clause 43 of the Spanish Constitution of 1978
Mhm.
establishes healthcare as a human right, and it establishes the responsibility of the government to provide it. So anybody on Spanish soil, regardless of residency status, documentation status, housing status, can go to the hospital if they have a problem and get coverage. You might pay something very small, like 25 euros,
Mhm.
something like that, but you don't have to. You can go. Anybody can go. You cannot get a doctor assigned to you in the healthcare system, have a primary care, access to the local clinic,
Mm.
unless you are paying into the system.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha.
But if you've lived here for more than a year, you can also buy into the national healthcare system, which is based on age. But, you know, I think at my age, it would be probably about 100 something a month. I
Okay.
think for retirees, I think it gets capped for people who are of retirement age. And I think that's capped at about 167 a month. So
Okay.
you could live here, be in the healthcare system. If you lived here for a year, about 160 a month per person. So for 300 and something, you could have your healthcare through the government and be part of that
Wow.
system.
So when you move there, let's say you don't know any of this, you don't even have to seek out a primary care. You know the clinic that you're in, the town you're in, paying into the system, you're going to have a doctor. So you didn't even think you had to look for a doctor.
Nope.
No. Now, having said that, if you move here on your private healthcare insurance for the first year
Yeah.
and you want a doctor who speaks English, there are a number of clinics that do that. A lot of the doctors who are independent practice here do not speak English very well. I was going through a doctor search in the first month I was here because I have conditions that require ongoing monitoring. I was on the website for my insurance company and it said, oh, this doctor speaks English. And I went there. He speaks English like he just started taking lessons yesterday. So, okay, this isn't going to work. A number of practices that specialize in teach that are English-speaking English practices.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't actually take the insurance directly, you go, you get your service, you pay for it, you submit for reimbursement. And that's the way it would work for the first year when you're not in the system yet. So yes, in that case, you do need to find a doctor.
Hugh, you speak Spanish fluently, proficiently?
Not fluently.
Efficiently.
I'm also an English teacher. So I view language proficiency in 3 stages. There's transactional, which I can do. I can go live my life, Spanish. And then there's conversational, to be able to get into a conversation with somebody, again, about surface level topics. But if you want to then go and have a philosophical conversation about politics and how you're going to make the world better, I'm nowhere near that yet. Right? That's the vocabulary I don't have yet. I can get by. And now that the masks have come off and I can lip read again because I'm hearing impaired, that's changed it a lot. And I'm really picking up. I'm also picking up Catalan, but I also have a flair for languages. So
Okay.
a little bit easier for me than for a lot of people.
Where you guys are, do the Spaniards speak both languages? I'm just curious.
In the neighborhood we live in,
Mm-hmm.
and in fact in Catalonia, teaching Catalan in primary school is required by law. So they teach both.
Excuse me, are those the 2 languages you're talking about, Spanish and Catalan?
Yeah, Spanish and Catalan.
Yeah.
So in Catalonia, it is required by local law to teach Catalan in primary school.
Okay.
So most people who were born and raised in Catalonia speak both Castellano,
Castellano,
which
Castilian
is
Spanish,
Spanish,
Mhm.
and Catalan.
Okay.
And because school is, it's not just, they don't just teach Catalan, school is taught in Catalan. So they learn history and, which is somewhat controversial. And there's changes coming requiring Spanish as well. And there's the whole dust up about Catalan and people preserving it. But it's also very generational. The older folks here who remember having Catalan banned under Franco and then experienced the joy of being able to speak it again when he died, they are very attached to their language.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of the younger generation saw it as something they had to do in school. And they come out and they're not really interested in speaking it because they see it as a sort of a device that is not helpful. They can speak Spanish everywhere. They can't speak Catalan everywhere. So it's a mixed bag. But yeah, in the neighborhood we're in, the village I mentioned earlier, all of the signs in the windows are in Catalan. Menus are in Catalan first with Spanish second. And you can speak, for somebody like me who's learning, you can speak a mixture. I can pull out words. So like you have Spanglish if you're using Spanish and English. I kind of use a combination of all three. So, and it works.
Okay.
And what about in the neighborhood? Can you get, if you don't speak Spanish or Catalan, can you get along, and do enough people speak English in the neighborhood?
As someone who is not traditionally good at picking up languages, I have been here for almost 2 years, and my Spanish is, I would say, the barest minimal of transactional. I can feed myself. I can order at restaurants. I can do the shopping I need, ask for directions. I can do those kinds of things. However, my accent is still so thoroughly American that even when I attempt to do a transaction in Spanish, for example, when I'm across the street at the grocery store and I successfully complete everything I need to do in Spanish, at the end, when I say gracias, they will usually reply with "you're welcome," because my accent is so American. I'm trying and they will still reply with "you're welcome."
It's an international enough city that, here's the thing, if you at least try a little bit of Spanish or a little bit of Catalan, then the doors open up, the walls come down, and they will share with their little bit of English if they don't have very good English, and then you make it work. But if you walk in and immediately say, "Can you help me in English?" They'll say no.
Sure.
They'll say no.
I get that. Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about, I actually want to ask about visa and residency.
Sure.
For someone who's like us, we don't have any connections. We don't have a Hugh. And
I could possibly get Italian.
Yeah, but you'll have to find.
Yeah, it's going to be tough. Yeah.
Yeah. Can you talk us through like the basics if we were to come?
Yeah, I can do that because that's my job now. So I learned a little.
Yes.
I'm not an expert, but I can speak to the generalities. So the most common visa that somebody retiring here would come on, or some people who have no connection, is the non-lucrative visa. And qualifying for that, I don't know the entire list of documents, but you have to write a letter of motivation about why you want to live in Spain. And you have to demonstrate resources, which will be enough money in the bank, in theory, to take care of yourself. Can you pass a background check? Each of the consulates in the U.S. has their own special rules, which is really interesting. Spanish bureaucracy is very interesting. There's very tight rules, and then there's like, okay, this functionary is observing the rules, and this functionary over here is not. So it's all about who you get and how they're feeling that day, and whether they had a bad fight with their husband the night before. But you go to your consulate in the U.S. is how you start. You have to make the application from the NLB from your home country, the non-lucrative visa, and you have to go to the consulate in whose jurisdiction you live. So New York City, Houston has, Oklahoma, Texas. They break it up, and you have to go. And every consulate has their kind of their own rules, and some of them are a little trickier than others. The basics are enough means private healthcare insurance, no background, no criminal background, and then you can pretty much get a non-lucrative visa, which is good for a year, renewable for 2. What a lot of people do is they get it for 1 year, renew it for 2 years twice, and at 5 years you can apply for permanent residency.
Okay.
Once you've been in the country for 5 years, that's the most common pathway. Now, that does not allow you to legally work in Spain. If you're retiring, obviously that's not a big deal. If you're like us and you want to move here and work remotely for another company, right now there's no way to legally do that. There is a digital nomad visa coming by the end of the year. We hope that will allow you to live here and work, not a Spanish entity. Another common path, a lot of retirees use the Golden Visa program, which is because they've gotten to their retirement with a certain amount of assets in the bank. Maybe they own their home and buy a place here. If they've invested 500,000 euros to buy a home or a couple of properties, one to rent and one to live in, invest 500,000 euros with no mortgage, no encumbrance, you can then apply for the Golden Visa, which allows you to live and work in Spain. Yeah, and lots of countries are starting that, but that's another topic.
Okay.
The Golden Visa is popular with people who want to get residency by investment, either in property property or there's other investments. But that's the basics of it. 500,000 euros in a property or a portfolio of property, no mortgages on them. They have to be unencumbered because you're investing in the country. And with that, you can apply for the golden visa, which is the right to live here based on owning property.
Which is 10 years.
I think it's a 10-year visa. And I think after that, most people apply for permanent residency.
Okay.
And I don't quite know what the difference between a visa and permanent residency is, but I know it's there.
Okay.
I know.
I can't talk to that. So those are the non-lucrative, golden, and then we have coming up on the digital nomad visa, hopefully by the end of the year, are the three most popular routes to residency for somebody who has no connection to the country. And then, there's the highly qualified worker. If you get recruited by a company and they want to sponsor you for that, you need the highly qualified worker visa, but you need company sponsorship for that.
And that's very hard to get, I assume, right?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, when Brian's company started the process for him, somebody in the company remembered from an interview and said, "Wait, didn't you say you're married to an Irish citizen?" And he said, "Yeah." And they said, "Oh, that's way easier. We'll fund the cost of that."
Nice.
It's also better for him because it's not tied to his employment. So
yeah.
One couple we had in the show previously, they wanted to retire to Spain. I know for the first year they had to have medical insurance, and they were denied because of a medical condition. Is that common? They ended up moving to Portugal.
Yeah, the private insurance companies can be picky about pre-existing conditions. You can be denied if you have some serious pre-existing condition, but I think you can keep shopping, and if you're willing to pay more in a premium and all that. Now, having said that, you get past the first year, you buy into the national system. There's no qualifications, no pre-existing conditions, nothing to do. It might be tricky for the first year, but I think, you can get it. You just might have to pay more.
If I don't have the residency to open a bank account and I'm just visiting, can I get a lease to rent? What do I have to show? So I have to show, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Non-residents can open bank accounts and non-residents can get leases. The amount of housing stock that's available to them might be limited.
Okay.
Not all landlords might want to rent to a non-resident, but you can rent. Yeah, you can do. There are plenty of people who maintain a residence in Spain, but they're not here full time, and they may not even be here on residency. They may come here for 2 months and go away and come back for 2 months, and they might work on that the Schengen 90 days and never actually establish residency or tax residency, which is where you have to be here for more than 183 days in a year in order to be considered a tax resident. There's all kinds of things possible.
Yeah, so the loopholes are kind of easy to jump through because it's all doable, and the government knows all this, but yet they allow it.
Well, so the government is very much motivated to have people bring their retirement nest eggs to Spain.
Mm-hmm.
Got it.
At the end of the day, there's a reason why there are many of the small villages in southern coastal Mediterranean Spain, the island of Majorca, the Maldives, all of these sort of tropical destinations literally can feel like you're in London or Brighton or Cambridge because there are so many UK retirees in these areas where you're walking down the high street and every restaurant offers a full English breakfast with sausage and bacon and mushrooms. And because at the end of the day, the Spanish government wants you to bring your retirement nest egg to Spain.
Yeah. I was going to ask you that, but you had mentioned that there aren't that many Indian restaurants. And I was going to say, is that because there's not enough UK residents?
But
it is specifically because you'll notice that a lot of the more like Southeast Asian restaurants and other cuisines, a lot of the family style restaurants you would see for like North Indian or South Indian or regional Indians only really come when there is a local population large enough to support it. I would say that immigrants from India make up probably from a percentage base, if we just extrapolate from the company that I work for, immigrants from India are the smallest percentage. We mostly have immigrants from Central and South America, other areas of Europe, North Africa, and North America, and then would be like India.
Oh, wow.
So as a percentage of the population, people from India are still a relatively small percentage of the overall population of Barcelona. So you're only going to find the British style Indian places with butter chicken and garlic naan and all that kind of stuff, and not actual Indian food.
Also because the Spanish don't eat spicy food.
That's true.
That's always a surprise to me. So no Chinese and Japanese, I guess.
No, we have it. We actually have a little area that I would call a Chinatown. I don't know if they call it that, but there's an area over near the Arc de Triomphe. Every other restaurant is Chinese or dim sum, and we've had soup dumplings. We've had good Chinese here.
You've had dim sum?
And there's good Szechuan here as well. I don't know.
Not spicy Szechuan. There's good Szechuan. Szechuan, but there's no like the mopo tofu here is like chicken soup.
I think you can get a
I
spicy.
love you guys. I love you guys. Okay. Where is the nearest airport?
Oh, 15 minutes away, 20 minutes away.
With traffic and everything, now that the tourists are back, it's probably closer to a half hour.
Yeah.
Half hour, 40 minutes. If you can take the train. There's a special train that runs from the city and the airport into the city center.
All right, cool. Now I'm going to avoid asking questions about entertainment and the arts because it's so readily available.
There is a lot of that entertainment in English. There are comedy clubs in English. There are trivia nights in English. You can go out, and if you go to the theater, I'm a Sondheim fan. I went to see Company. I went to see Company recently, directed by Antonio Banderas, and
I love it.
I expected the dialogue to be translated into Spanish, but I expected the songs to be in English. They translated the songs into Spanish. Really lovely to see because I know that soundtrack in my sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't need to understand the Spanish in order to just enjoy the spectacle, the visual and the musical spectacle, and hearing that very, some of those very staccato, those songs that have the rapid fire delivery in English, and they the same exact way in Spanish. And I'm
nice.
So, and there are English movie theaters here. You see American releases in English. Yeah, it's here.
There is enough of an expat or immigrant community here of English speakers. If you chose to have an English only experience, you could. We would not suggest doing that for people.
Mm-hmm. That's not our choice.
But there are, for example, there are neighborhoods in Barcelona where there are expat families who send their kids to international schools that speak the language that they speak and who choose to have the
bubble.
They choose to build a bubble around them where they're only exposed to other English families and English menus and English entertainment options. You do not get the breadth and depth of your cultural experience of living in Barcelona. Sure. It is possible to do that.
Yeah. I love that earlier. I don't know which one of you said this, but that you're there as an immigrant and not an expat. I love it.
I mean,
that. Because I wasn't.
Expat is a term by white people because they don't want to refer to themselves as an immigrant because they think immigrant means brown people.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yes. Because for years, I wasn't born in the U.S. and for years I felt that way about the term immigrants, and people still look down on the term. It wasn't until much later I was so proud that I'm an immigrant and I could go to Spain and be an immigrant again.
So fragile white people came up with the term expat so that they wouldn't be lumped in with the term with a bunch of brown people.
The term expatriate, expat, is not just used with Americans, and it has a valid definition. That's true. Typically somebody who has been posted to a foreign city for work or for a temporary purpose. They're there for a couple of years because their company sent them there. That's a valid expat experience. They're out. Expatriate means they're outside their country. They're living outside their country of origin, and they intend to return. But if you've sold everything that you own and you've moved to the country and you're buying property there and you're living there, you're not an expat. You're an immigrant. I was already a second generation Irish family anyway. My father's first generation. So being an immigrant is not a stigma to me, but it is stigmatized in the U.S., that term for sure.
Yeah, but you know what? No offense, but coming from Ireland as an immigrant is very different from coming from
100%.
China, right? Yeah.
100%. What about the weather? Is it that hot there?
Not normally.
This has been as we've all seen.
I feel like everybody I know is living in a very hot summer and complaining.
Right. Yeah. United Kingdom, certainly, even though it's further north than us, based on the way that climate is happening, they are being brutalized this summer. And the problem with the United Kingdom is that something only like 10% of all the homes in the United Kingdom have air conditioning available to them. So when it gets to be, I'll switch to Fahrenheit, even though we're trying to do Celsius, we live in Europe. But when it gets to like 90 degrees plus in the United Kingdom, it is actually considered a serious health hazard.
Oh.
Barcelona is a coastal city on the Mediterranean. We are having a warmer than usual summer, but right now outside it is probably 90.
And that would be expected in August, but it started for us in June. Just like everybody else's summer this year seemed to start unseasonably warm. San Antonio, where we had just moved away from, started with 100-degree weather in May this year, or March. But typically it's a subtropical climate, and we have a mountain range that captures the air coming in from the sea. We have a climate that's not too dissimilar from the Bay Area of California. It gets down into the 50s and maybe the high 40s at night in the winter, and it goes up into the 60s. If you're in the sun, it's beautiful. One thing I will say that surprised me is that the air quality here is often not good, and that's because of the port. So that same mountain range that captures all the sea air also captures the emissions from the port. I don't actually notice it. It doesn't affect my breathing, but when you look at the weather on your phone, it'll say air quality today, fair. Air quality today, poor, very frequently, which surprised me because I thought we're on the ocean.
Right.
but it's not because of the port. And
there's two factors. There's the port, but there's also the Mediterranean trade winds will blow up sand from North Africa. Consistently, one of the reasons why you see pictures of absolutely beautiful sunrises and sunsets over Barcelona is because of the amount of sand in the air that is being blown up from the Sahara.
I didn't know that.
Oh, interesting.
Wow.
You can actually see that, though? Can you see it?
You can't actually see it in the air, but it does affect it magnifies the sunrise and the sunset over the Mediterranean Ocean.
How cold does it get in the winter?
I walk my dog at 7 a.m. every morning. So that's my good barometer. I always look.
Yeah.
And I would say that the coldest I've seen is the high 30s, and that's at 7 in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
But typically in the winter, at that hour, it's in the high 40s.
It'll be in the 60s during the day.
Okay.
I mean, sometimes it only goes to the 50s, and it can be rainy in the winter, and it can be cloudy in the winter sometimes. But there are patches, periods of time. It's not, it's not a full like Seattle-like gray winter.
At the same time, you're also a 2-hour train ride away from snow skiing up in the mountains. You're a 20-minute walk to the beach. Like whatever climate you actually want to have, you can have in Catalonia because of our proximity to the mountains, because of our proximity to the ocean. Whatever weather conditions you would prefer, you can find within 2 hours of Barcelona.
Like living in Southern California, you can go anywhere to any kind of climate you want.
So I have an unrelated question, but very important. Recycling efforts.
Oh, yeah.
Does Barcelona, are they totally embraced? Do you have receptacles everywhere for everything? And do people respect it?
So the things we have, the receptacles we have are yellow for plastic and cans and foil. We have blue for paper.
Cardboard, paper.
Unsoiled, no food.
Yep.
We have brown for composting, green for glass. And then we have the bin for everything else. There's no way to enforce it because it's just everybody just goes down, throws their own trash in. And I have seen, for example, people throw their composting into the bin in a plastic bag. Obviously,
I know. I don't get that. Yeah.
I don't either, but people do it just like any system. It's all about how
educating.
Well we do, but the recycling bins do fill up. They get emptied every single day. So a lot of people are doing it. The mayor and the government are very, very pro economic, environmental initiatives. For sure, people don't.
And it is very much enforced in workplaces. Oh. So like my company's headquarters has all of those same like compost, packaging material, glassware, cans, paper. And it is, since they collect it inside the building, it is actually inspected and everything by the government. And we would pay a fine if, for example, you decided you wanted to throw all of your organic waste into the paper. That would be a problem for our company that we would have to pay a fee, an extra processing fee for dealing with that. And so in office buildings, it's far more strictly enforced than it is just on the street. But on the street, I'd say every 4 or 5 blocks, there's a big set of bins for people to bring their recycling to.
But it's great that corporations do that because that's such an educational piece. And you said there's composting in an organization?
Yep.
That is shocking.
All of our organic and food waste has to go in its own receptacle. And then depending on how new you're building, a lot of the newer buildings and newer construction will actually divert that into their own local system to do composting to then feed their own like terraces and green spaces. And
That's
like
wonderful.
That.
That's so good.
One of the things I was surprised about here is we can also recycle our styrofoam.
Oh.
And our, the brick packaging.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are recyclable here. Because they're also, milk is sold on the shelf, not refrigerated and sealed in that kind of packaging. So there's a lot of it. So it's recycled. It is recycled with the plastics.
Yeah. Wow. It's so, Europe is really, Germany, amazing. Yeah. Good.
I had a friend who taught in Japan for a year and she had 17 items she had to recycle.
Oh my goodness.
I know, I've become so conscious that it brings me anxiety, actually. I'm food shopping and I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do with this? I can't get it. But I'm not going to go about squeezing oranges, although we can recycle the container.
The situation in the US, and I was in the recycling industry consulting side for a little while, is that all of these things are technically recyclable, but the systems, each individual town,
they can't handle it.
Well, they decide, they build their facilities, they decide what's the most important thing to recycle. And if even though it's recyclable, they may not collect it.
All right.
That has to do with the economics of the system. And
even the company that I work for, we are the only, at this point, completely carbon neutral delivery company, including all of the cars that are used and scooters that are used and motorcycles to use. All of that is offset. We actually sell sustainable packaging to our restaurant. We allow our restaurant and our partners to get sustainable packaging through us, so that when your dinner shows up, all of the packaging material it shows up in is 100% carbon neutral. We allow customers even little things like when you're ordering your takeout, do you really need your chopsticks? You can option to say, no, I don't. And it won't actually be included.
And you won't see any plastic straws here. In fact, it's either paper.
Good.
One of my favorite cocktail bars actually uses that hollow pasta. That's like,
yes, I heard.
They actually use that for a straw.
That's so funny. Brian,
can we mention the name of your company?
Yeah, the company I work for is Glovo, Glovo. They are a European-only competitor to Uber Eats or Just Eats or DoorDash or any of those. We operate in Europe and in Africa. We don't operate in the United States. One of the reasons why it was appealing to me was that it's essentially run by a socialist. And the founder of my company said, look, I want to run the company that pays our couriers more than anybody else. The company I work for worked with the national government to establish legislation to provide healthcare benefits, training opportunities, minimum income standards that are considered the minimum wage for jobs. And so we want to be the company that actually provides a opportunity for people to increase their financial security, not be the company that makes money off backs of people doing that. That, of course, means we are the smallest player. We are not the biggest, most dominant player in our space. We don't make as much profit as the Uber Eats of the world and the Just Eats of the world, but we're okay with that.
Yeah.
We're okay.
You don't need to be greedy.
Making the profit that we make and knowing that at night we can sleep, that 50,000 couriers in Africa and all over Europe are actually making more money on our platform than they would be able to on any other platform. Yeah. And if that means that we make a little less money, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to say that my husband, you got a taste of his politics here. He wouldn't be able to work for a company like that unless that was the situation.
Hey, good for you.
That's like
good
Gil.
for you. That's how I am.
Yeah. Let's move on to crime and safety in Barcelona. How would you describe that?
The way that we describe Barcelona from a safety perspective is we have a number of single young female friends that we've made since moving to Barcelona. All of them feel like they can walk around at night in any neighborhood in this city by themselves, perfectly safe.
Except for the
Raval, which is one of the tourist centers down near the cruise ship terminal. So that neighborhood specifically is where you will see a high number of things like pickpocketers, tourist scammers. Hey, do you want to buy a map? And then they try and take your phone, things like that. I will say that it is not a violent city, but due to the number of tourists that we get, it is a city where property crime in certain areas is higher than normal.
It's really a crimes of opportunity.
Yeah.
If you're not paying attention and you leave your phone out on your table with your friends at the cafe, someone's going to swipe it.
But it's a very safe city otherwise.
Speaking of tourists, there's so many tourists. Does that bother you?
We live in a neighborhood that's about 2 miles north of what is considered the tourism center of Barcelona.
The old city.
We would probably have a very different opinion about living in Barcelona if we had wound up living in one of those neighborhoods. Pre-pandemic, Barcelona had 30 plus million tourists visit every year. Wow. That is an awful lot of tourism. It was the second highest tourism in the world or something like that. The neighborhood we live in is adjacent to some of the tourist-centric areas, but it is nowhere near that. The pandemic shut all of that down. And I moved here at the height of the lockdown, and I could walk around all of those areas by myself in the middle of the day.
That's nice.
Oh, wow.
During that time, the city of Barcelona, really the government, started asking itself, what is the city we want to be in a post-pandemic world? And so there are areas in our city where they are beta testing a lot of very new, cutting edge, new urbanism techniques where they are shutting down 10-block areas of the city to motor cars, to street traffic. They are adding greenways and pedestrian thoroughways. Nice. They are reducing the number of Airbnbs allowed, literally trying to ask the question, do we want to go back to what it was before, or do we want to take this opportunity to reimagine what some of these neighborhoods are going to be? There's been a lot of fascinating new kind of urban development over the last 2 years where Barcelona is really trying to say, how do we balance the need for tourism because we have all of these history. We have all the Gaudi buildings. We need that tourism money, but we don't want to become completely dependent on it.
Great. I have one more question before Gil kills me here. It's been said that Barcelona's architecture is a visual feast for the eyes.
No, we're not asking this question.
I have one question.
Oh.
And Gaudi's work can be seen all over the Gothic Quarter.
I'm cutting this out.
Are you pro or anti-Gaudi?
That's actually a perfect question for you to ask.
It actually is a great question, and Brian and I would have different answers. Although so Gaudi was a genius, creative genius, but we do not belong to the cult of Gaudi.
Thank you.
Gaudi was a completely undiagnosed, clinically insane person.
Thank you.
And his buildings are some of the ugliest things I've ever seen in my life.
Hallelujah.
They are a monument. They are a monument to what happens when a clinically depressed person is not given medication to manage their manic episodes.
Oh my God. All right. I'm leaving this in because I feel the same. I mean, no offense. We had an episode where this issue came up and someone said, "Oh my God, are you kidding?"
Oh,
and
yeah.
I said,
I
said, "I'm sorry. His work makes me itch. It's like all these little pockets because I love art. And yes, art is in the eye of the beholder, but it hurts my eyes."
He's literally the physical his buildings are the physical manifestation of a manic episode where every idea that pops into his head is a good one. And so he's just going to throw it on the building.
But it's all over. It's always the same.
I would say that impression of his work changes based on the period of his activity. His early works, the stuff he did in the beginning, things like Palau Güell, which nobody goes to see, and the towers up in the northern part of the city are much more
mild.
Yeah.
Because he had a theme and he stuck to it.
But
okay,
if you go to Park Güell and you see what would happen if Dr. Seuss had become an architect.
But you go to La Sagrada Familia and you see what happens when an insane person is an architect.
Well, I think people try to think, or they want people to think they're cool because they say, "Oh, I'm a Gaudi fan."
Yes.
On that note.
Are you glad, Gil?
Yes, I'm glad. I'm glad you made my day. Thank you both, Hugh and Brian. We really appreciate having you guys on. I think this is the longest episode to date.
Uh-oh.
And by the time...
you got an Irishman who can talk. So.
You're so bad yourself there.
Yeah, and by the time, it's going to be hard to edit. By the time this is released, it'll be over 100th episode.
Congratulations.
Yay! Thank you. We really learned a lot, actually.
Yeah, you were great.
As much information as there is out in the world about Barcelona, we learned a lot, and we appreciate it.
Good.
We're glad.
All right, guys. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Have a good day.
Afternoon.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you know someone who's relocated for retirement and wishes to share their story with us, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is gg@retirethere.com. Our website is retirethere.com, and you may follow us on Twitter @retirethere_. Now, if you've liked our show, please subscribe and rate it in Apple Podcasts. In the meantime, be well.